Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz from Violence Free Colorado, and both Brandy and I, who are your training and technical assistance team, are here today to talk to you a little bit about DVP Outcome number 5 and how we can support you in working towards that next reporting goal. Are you able to hear us, Brandy?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? This is Brandy.
I can.
Oh, you're sorry.
Can you? All right, so we're going to go ahead while Brandy figures that out. We're going to go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to talk about today is kind of what DVP outcome number 5 is, understanding some of DVP's expectations around that goal, creating a timeline for accomplishing your goal, and how to pick an outcome, and hopefully communicate tools and how Colorado. So first thing we're going to talk about is what exactly is outcome number 5. So you've probably seen in some of DVP's newsletters or updates some information about outcome number 5. So basically what it is that they are talking about developing policies and protocols, and a lot of those policies, if you've had a DVP site visit in the last year or so, or have you seen the policy templates that they've put out, a lot of those policy templates are really working towards creating this accessible, culturally informed and trauma-informed culture and services for survivors. And so this is just the language from outcome number 5 if you haven't seen it. And so really this goal that you're going to be working towards in this current 2020 grant cycle is really going to be focused on those protocols and those actions that really back up those policies you probably already have in place. And also I wanted to say, I realized I didn't mention this at the beginning, please feel free to jump in the chat box or the Q&A and let us know if you have any questions. So, best way to kind of understand what DVP expects for you in this outcome number 5, they have a really, really detailed and well done document called Strengthening Inclusive Advocacy, Accessible, Culturally Responsive, and Trauma-Informed Services. And there's a link here on the slide, and I highly recommend it. It is very detailed. It has examples of different goals you could set, and it has a lot of really good background information about why this is a goal, where it's coming from FFY, and how that is going to shape your implementation of this goal. And they've also started doing a new series, that's the second bullet point here that's linked there, where they're interviewing programs that have already set up their ACRTI goal and started working towards that. And they're going to keep adding to this throughout the year. And so I really encourage you to take a look at that. On the DVP website, they have the announcements section, which is like their blog section, and it has anything that's in the newsletter comes from there. So it's a great place if you accidentally delete your newsletter or you can't find one of them, that's a great place to go and access any information that you may have gotten through the newsletter. And so that interview really gives you kind of a peek into what they're looking for and what those goals might look like. But also remember that it's a guideline because everybody's goals are going to be very different and program specific. And then another great reason to keep an eye on your newsletter and keep an eye on the announcement section of their website is that they will be releasing the actual reporting questions, I think fairly soon. But that way, you know, they've released all this wonderful guidance about it, but then soon you'll be able to see the actual questions, which you'll be reporting on this October. So here's just a little more language about what this is, right? So with your year-end narrative that will be due October 31st of 2020, this is what you are expected to have. You're expected to have a goal that you've set that is built on this ACRTI framework. You are expected to have attended some trainings around that, or include any trainings that were part of your goal. You're working towards your progress of enhancing those practices towards your goal that you've picked, and any successes or challenges that you may have met in the process. And so all of these things will be part of that year-end narrative that you provide. And so you don't have to, at this point in the year, you're not providing any information before then. I'm going to show you a timeline in just a second. So basically what we're hoping to do is get you prepared so that when that year-end reporting rolls around, you are ready to share what your experiences have been with setting this goal. And so they're going to review that, the goal you set and the progress that you made towards it. So you won't be penalized if you don't make as much progress as you were hoping to toward your goal, right? Really what they're looking for is that you have set a goal and that you are taking consistent action towards that. So, you know, say for example that your goal is to have your resident welcome packet in Braille by the end of, by the end of this reporting period. That way, you know, folks who are blind or who may not be able to do that might have another way to access your services and information. But say by the time you get to October and you're reporting that, you just have, you know, the initial documents, but you still need to get, say, you know, a release of information translated into Braille. You haven't been able to quite finish the project yet. You're not going to be punished for that. What they're really just looking for is that you are reaching towards these goals that are helping to make your organization more inclusive, or these, like, around these ACRTI principles, and that you're working towards that. So, you know, in that instance, you would talk about, like, what are your challenges? Well, you know, it's not always easy to find a place that can translate documents into Braille. Sometimes it can be expensive. And so just figuring out as you're navigating those, what those challenges are that you're facing in that. So those will be the types of things that you will be reporting on. And also these questions around what your goal is and what you're working towards are also going to be a part of your site visit process, right? So if you have DVP site visit coming up, this is something that they're going to check in with you about. They're going to talk to you about what your goal is, where you're meeting challenges, where you're having successes, what kind of community participation you have, any of those kinds of things that are related to your goal. And they just want to hear about how it's going and how they can support you in navigating that goal. And that's also a great time, if you have a site visit coming up, a great time to talk about what your training and technical assistance needs might be around that. Also, some voluntary things around site visits is that you're welcome to invite staff and or volunteers and board members to receive more information about training, if that's something you want to do as part of that. And also if you have some policies that you want some direct in-person feedback on, you can always do that through us at Violence Free Colorado, but you can also do that as part of a site visit. And sometimes that's really helpful to get that in-person feedback and to have a conversation, especially if there's a policy that you're really struggling with or you're having challenges around. That might be a great time to talk about some of those resources. So this slide, so first thing I want to be very clear with this slide is that the only thing that is DVP required on this whole slide is that final reporting deadline, that October 31st, 2020. That is the last day you're going to be able to submit that report to be on time and to have that information in it. What we're suggesting here at Violence Free Colorado is that these other dates are ones that you can use to make sure that you're tracking your progress towards meeting this goal. So you don't get to September, October, and you're in a really tight spot because you haven't made any progress on your goal. So first thing we're recommending is by the end of February, and obviously we made these dates up. They were in order to kind of space it out through the year so that you would have time to check in. So, you know, look at your calendar, look at your own organization, what circumstances that you are facing, and set this goal for these check-ins that in a way that works for you. But I really recommend having them. Put them in your calendar, write them down, print this out and put this up somewhere so that you are constantly reminded that this is something you need to be working on. So end of February, we recommend that you have your goal selected, finalized, and that it's been shared with other folks in your organization and or any community partners who might be a part of that goal. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but if you have external partners that are going to be part of helping you reach your goal, have that in writing, finalized, and ready to share with everybody by the end of February. And then so we're suggesting in May, you do a first check-in. And so what I really recommend is that when you set your final goal at the end of February, is that you save it at the top of a Word document or in a Google document or wherever is a really handy place for you. You save that goal up at the top. And then you just start putting bullet points under it, just so that you have something to refer to when you're writing that final report. So, you put your goal up there, and then maybe your first bullet point is that you shared it with a community partner, or that you talked about it at staff meeting, or that you sent out an email to the board. Whatever it is, however you shared that, put that in that document so you don't have to remember that in so many months. So the next thing, and we recommend in May, is that you do a check-in. You open that document back up and you talk about where you are in progress towards that goal. Just write out bullet points, write out successes, write out challenges. Like, those are just as important as your successes, right? Because those are things that points where you can get support and learn and grow through that. And that's going to, really shape your goals in coming years. So having that challenge information is really helpful. And then think about one thing that you're going to tweak a little bit, or you're going to try something different. Maybe you've hit a roadblock with one community partner. So in May, you're going to reach out to a different community partner, or you're going to, go check in with maybe your goal is based around some staff feedback that you received. And so you're going to check back in with those staff members and hear about what's working for them and what's not working for them. And then in that, by May, for sure, those reporting questions, you will have those verbatim for what you're going to have to report in October. So that would be a great time to just copy and paste those questions into this document and start writing out a little bit of an answer for those. It's not going to be a full answer yet because you haven't, reached through the whole time period, but it's going to be a really good place to start jotting down some notes. And then we recommend in July, you do another check-in. Write down all your notes, your challenges, your successes. This is a really good place to put perhaps a survivor story with de-identified information. So, maybe your Braille documents helped a survivor gain access to your support group, right? Or whatever it is, whatever success you have folks who weren't previously accessing, services are able to now access services in a different way. So put that in there, right? Jot a little note down. No need for personally identifying information, just a little bit about the situation. And then, of course, you will use that document when you're writing your final report for DVP. So here are some steps to help you in picking an outcome. Honestly, this is one of the harder parts because there are so many different things you could choose, right? This idea of accessible, culturally sensitive, and trauma-informed services, right, are very broad, and they can look very different in every community. And that's wonderful because it means that you're in charge and you get to really pick something that is going to have an impact on the folks that you're working with. But it's also hard because you have to narrow down your options. So start by pulling together some feedback that you've gotten. It could be something as formal as your feedback from your FFY surveys or any other surveys you do for people receiving your services. And it can also be informal, like what types of complaints and concerns do you get regularly? What are some of the challenges that staff are facing in providing services? Whatever it is in your situation, just gather that information together because you can use that to inform your goal. And then, so of course, this whole ACRTI framework is based on work that is being done at the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. They really have created this core curriculum. Some of you may have attended some of their in-person trainings last year, and we're planning on having them back in the future to do trainings. So their Tools for Transformation toolkit is really, really helpful. And it is a step-by-step walkthrough of evaluating your services and programs for these ACRTI principles. And so you can use that document. You don't have to do the whole document, right? It would be super overwhelming to do the whole document, right? You are looking for one goal, one outcome, one program that you can work towards. And so the next slide, this has the key areas that are included in that document from the National Center. So sometimes it helps to know, even before you look at that document, what area you want to work on. What based on the feedback you've received, what is that area that you want to set as a goal for your organization? And so sometimes it helps to start there, and then you can target in on that chapter. Or you can use that document to look through and get some ideas. There are examples and ideas of things that you can do to choose as your goals. So it's a great place to go for ideas. But I think this kind of area overview is really helpful because it shows you kind of what kind of the key areas are. And something I've talked to programs across the state who are already starting to select their goals and think about this. And direct service is a really ripe area, right? Whether that's shelter, whether that's community-based advocacy, whatever it looks like in your program, that's a great place to start. But we've also seen programs look at community partnerships, right? I think domestic violence advocates are so incredible at connecting survivors with resources, right? That's one of our key skills and strengths. So having some time and some focus on building up a new partnership or investing in an existing partnership is a great goal to look at, right? So look through, there are no wrong options in this list. Look through and take that feedback into account and see what works well for you in that document. And then, so next thing, what you're really going to want to think about is that DVP is looking at whether these goals are quote unquote SMART goals, right? And so that is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, right? So when you start writing out your sentence or two description of what your outcome is going to be, you're going to want to run it through each of these lenses to make sure that you're getting there. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit later, but this is also a really wonderful place where Violence Free Colorado can provide you a lot of support, right? We can give you feedback on each of these metrics to make sure that your goal is really meeting that. And I also want to make a note, especially on achievability, right? So when we start looking at these different elements that fall under this kind of ACRTI framework, there are so many of them, and there are so many different ways that you could take this that I really want you to focus on achievable, right? This is something else that you're having to add into what is already a very full plate, right? There's so much that you're already doing, and so think about a goal that really complements and supports the work that you're already doing, and something that would, in some ways, make your life easier, or make it easier for you to provide services, or make your staff experience better, or whatever it is. Think of a way to make it achievable, but also both work in conjunction with what you're already doing, right? And so don't feel like these have to be, ridiculously difficult to achieve goals. I think this is a great place where you can look at that interview that DVP did with A Woman's Place and see what were their elements, right? What were they picking as their goal? And that can give you kind of a sense of scale and scope. This doesn't have to be huge, right? It needs to be achievable. And so think about that and think about how you can do it in a way that is not too overwhelming to what you've already got on your plate. And so after you've got your goal, after you've you've ran it through these kind of SMART metrics. And I really recommend just writing them out. Like underneath, write your goal in a sentence or two, and underneath it, how is it specific? It's specific because we're addressing this group of survivors and what they need in their services, or it's specific because we're addressing this, this hole or this gap in our service provision, or whatever it is. Just write it out. Write out specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, and make sure all of those things are there. And think about time-bound within, like you're going to have to report on this, right, in October. So think about that as time-bound. And so you want it to be achievable in the next few months. And so once you've got all of that, you can take your goal and review it with the folks that you got feedback from. Do you have a survivors group where, you're working with survivors who are maybe out of immediate danger and could provide you some feedback? How do survivors normally have input in your organization? Is there a way that you can use those channels to share that information? Can you get feedback from staff? Can you get feedback from your board, from your community partner members? Whatever it is in your situation based on the outcome that you pick, you will want to kind of dig into that and get some feedback around that to make sure you're on track. And this is also a really good time to think about who's going to be executing those goals. Maybe the goal is set, with an executive director, board members, or supervising staff. But then some of the implementation, maybe that's happening with your direct service staff, your advocates, or your shelter staff, or whatever it is. So check in with those folks who are going to be implementing that and get their feedback on, is this truly achievable? How are we going to measure this? How are they going to get input back to you so you have that information to report to DVP? So it's helpful if you think of those things in advance, and they don't have to be super fancy. Like, nobody's saying you need a new tracking spreadsheet or anything like that. Like, it could just be like that you are sharing the questions that DVP puts out that you're going to be reporting on. You're sharing them with a direct service advocate who's working on this, and you're asking them just to send you back a couple of sentences once or twice throughout this reporting period. It can be informal, but I recommend automating it for yourself, putting it on your calendar, reminding it, doing that all now, so it's less that you have to think about and worry about in the long run. And then the final step is to keep that goal in a document. You want to be able to access it easily, look at it, and add to it throughout the year up until September, so that you're making sure that you're getting good information. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Brandy now. And I can advance the slides. Brandy, just let me know when you want me to.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, I fixed our issue from earlier. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Is that good?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful, thanks. Okay, let's see. Yep, okay. Thank you for chat boxing responses too. So we want to present some helpful tools, thinking about, as Liz was mentioning, these don't have to be the largest goal you've ever thought of. It's about making them achievable, making them really community specific for your organization. So thinking about, what you know in your own community and other organizations in the community that have different focuses that can help support you throughout this process. And even while you're working on this one goal, your relationships with other community partners might help you think of future goals, for example. So just really, focusing on community and looking at, what resources you have and the richness of those partnerships. And, we also there's also the online training and resource center that is through the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. We will send out these slides to everybody who's on the call today and registered for the webinar. So you will get all of these links, so no worries. But they have a great online training resource center. They have so many different materials if you're wanting to kind of check out supports that they have. There's also what's called a trauma-informed policy review checklist. I know that's a mouthful, but we have that uploaded on our coalition manager through Violence Free Colorado. And that, again, is also a great resource if you're trying to walk through kind of looking at how things are measured, what parts of your goal that maybe you've already achieved, things that you maybe haven't yet, but you want to make sure are on your radar. That checklist can be really, really helpful. And then also the 2018 Colorado Domestic Violence Needs Assessment. That was something that DVP funded for Violence Free Colorado and some community partners to collaborate on. And we've also included some links with the full report, as well as a webinar that was presented last year about the outcomes of the needs assessment. So there's a lot of great material there if you're looking for a goal and you're not sure, like, well, what specific things are needs across the state? Well, then the needs assessment does identify several of those if you're trying to figure out what, what's a good jumping off point for your organization. Can we go to the next slide, Liz? All right, and how can we help? So here at Violence Free Colorado, we can provide some technical assistance. Many of you have already reached out and asked us questions, which is absolutely amazing, and we encourage that. So we can answer questions that you have. We can talk you through different barriers that and challenges that you're experiencing while you're working on your goals. We can also, and I think Liz mentioned this earlier, we can review and give you feedback, whether that's on your SMART goal write-up, on your goal selection, on implementation, basically on any step of the process. We can also connect you with other programs who might be working on similar issues. Maybe you want to pick someone else's brain who's really doing a similar concept. So we definitely encourage collaboration and communication between programs, which is also something that you could add to your documentation of your goal. We can also connect you to TA from the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. And then there's some accessing Liz, and her phone number and email address are on here. And all of these are free to all DVP funded programs. So even if you're not a member of Violence Free Colorado, if you're DVP funded, you absolutely can access these resources related to the DVP goals. We go to the next slide. And then also, in addition to technical assistance, we have training. So we can do in-person, whether that's on-site, or we could do a web-based custom training based on whatever your group or organization's needs are. And the training can be accessed the same way as on the previous slide where Liz's contact information was listed. So we also have some pre-recorded webinars, and our YouTube channel is, the address is here. And we do have a couple more webinars coming up in terms of our Healthy Organization webinar series. There's 2 left in February. So wanted to provide you some links to help support you and your organization in terms of wanting to learn more, or if there's something specific. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I see a topic on a webinar, I'm like, oh, I didn't know I wanted to know about that, but now I do. So yeah, we go to the next one. So we had a question about emailing the links. Yes, we will email the PowerPoint out after the webinar. We can mail that out to everyone. So absolutely. So don't worry about not having those links written down. They're pretty long. So we'll get those to you. Another way that we can be of assistance for people who are members of Violence Free Colorado, we do have our Online Learning Center, or OLC, and that currently has 22 courses. And we listed out a few of the courses that might be relevant to some of your ACRTI ACRTI goals. So there's the Introduction to Cultural Competency, Survivors with Disabilities, Working with LGBTQ Survivors, Trauma-Informed Survivor-Centered Advocacy, which is also Part 1 and Part 2. And then there's also a newer Best Practices in Domestic Violence Shelters course. So those are just kind of a good reminder that, you know, if you're a member of Violence Free Colorado, you have access to the OLC, and that can be a good resource. And if you've already taken some of those courses and they're relative to your ACRTI goal, then make sure you make a note of those. You know, make a note that that's some of the foundational work that you've done. Right, I think we have 1 or 2 more slides. Okay, so this is kind of just a review of the timeline that Liz had mentioned earlier. So this, you know, we're suggesting these. You might wiggle around, like maybe you have a fundraiser or maybe you have other things that are popping up that it might conflict, but create your own. If these dates don't work for you, absolutely create your own dates and create your own calendar, so that way it's something that keeps coming up and doesn't kind of just sneak up on you in September. So again, these are recommended except for that October 31st, 2020 date. That's your formal reporting due date. But all of these others are, you get to decide what works for you. We were thoughtful about wanting to make sure that we help organizations really think about, like, what will the time take? What time will this take to actually do whatever it is that you want to work on for your organization? All right, let's see. Next slide. All right, there's our contact info.
Oh yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add is that we can partner with you as part of your outcome. So Violence Free Colorado can be a component of your outcome. Maybe your outcome is about staff receiving certain training or different things. So feel free to reach out to us. That not only can we help you set your outcome, we can help you in achieving it as well.
Yes, that's a great point. So, and our contact information is here. And like I said, you'll all get this emailed out to you. I should be able to do that later on today. And then you'll have that all handy, especially with those great links. I think that, there's a lot in this very short webinar, but if anybody has a very specific question that they want to ask right now, they can. Otherwise, like I said, we're available. You can email us, you can call us, whatever works best for you. If you want to think about it, we're accessible for all of you to support you in this process.
Yes. So that is all the information we have for you right now. We want to be respectful of your time. So thank you so much for joining. We'll send out the slides. This webinar will also be going onto our YouTube. So if you have other staff members or other programs who are wanting to access this information, it will be available to them as well.
Great.
And thank you all so much for taking time and joining us, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you.